Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of December and the full moon that we have coming up in Gemini on the 18th or 19th, depending on where in the world you live. Now, just before we get to the astrology, sadly more housekeeping, I just want to say this is my one and only official YouTube channel. There are no others. The others are fake accounts. So I think there are 5 of them at the moment: Astrology, Astrology TV, B0, Pam Gregory Classic, Pam Gregory Classics. They're all using my material, but they're fake accounts. So this is the only one. So don't normally suggest this, but if you want to subscribe, then you'll get the notifications for this channel. Also on Instagram, I set up an account on Instagram way back in 2018, have never used it since. I am not at all active on Instagram. I have no active account on Instagram, but I understand there's a fake account there with several thousand people who have joined that group and several hundred messages waiting for me. So just to say, that is a fake account. So if you want to kind of call that out to people on the account, that would be really helpful, because I just don't want people to be misled, and more importantly, I don't want people to lose money. A lot is happening behind the scenes with that. I'm getting a lot of energetic help with that too. So all is in hand. Now let's talk about the astrology, because there's a lot to talk about here. So much. It's like a crescendo of energy through this second half. The astrology is dense, complex, huge, actually, in so many ways. One of the big themes through December is that Venus is coming to conjunct Pluto. In fact, if I backtrack a little, Venus does this 3 times because it stays in Capricorn an unusually long time because of her retrograde motion, stays there till early March. So there are 3 points at which Venus becomes exact in conjunction to Pluto: the 11th of December, the 25th, Christmas Day, and the 3rd of March. And she moves retrograde on the 19th. So what are the themes around this? Well, I mentioned some of this last time, but particularly in Capricorn, this is around big banking, big organizations, governments, top-down structures that have power over us. Capricorn, it could be certainly finances and economics, stock markets, that kind of thing, although we may really see that going into January and February, because that's getting so close to the US Pluto return as well. So it's around those themes very strongly, both personal and global. Another theme is the radical shift in values. Oh, just before I say that, actually, just to say also, when Venus moves retrograde on the 19th, astrologer Ray Merriman has noticed that that's very associated with changes in central bank policies. So again, this is all around some brewing turbulence in the economy and the stock markets. Another big theme is a radical review of values, particularly after the 19th, when Venus is retrograde. If you think back to 2 years ago, what your values were then and how they probably have changed enormously in the last 2 years, got much simpler, got much more down to basics, that is going to continue. And of course, that whole theme really until 2026 is very much about Uranus moving through Taurus. Taurus values, and Uranus is a radical shift. So that's another main theme of this. Another theme is that because Venus is retrograde, it can mean sometimes that old flames, old lovers come back into our world. And again, it's very good to evaluate, have you grown at the same pace? Do you still have the same values as you might have had a few years ago? Because that's going to be absolutely fundamental in terms of how that relationship works. Hard aspects between Venus and Pluto can bring about kind of obsessive emotion, almost wasted emotion, over-the-top emotion. So it could well be that you actually meet someone who is on the same wavelength as you, and that becomes a kind of crazy, karmic, obsessive relationship too. The final aspect of this that I'd like to highlight is that Venus in general is around our pleasure, our comfort, good food, lovely comfy sofas, warmth, cuddling down. It's around pleasure and comfort. However, when it moves retrograde, sometimes those things are harder for us to find, harder to find comfort and pleasure. And particularly because the second exact conjunction is happening here between Venus and Pluto on the 25th, and we've also got that very important square between Saturn and Uranus on the 24th that's exact. I'll talk about that in a moment. I can just see some changes happening as we move towards Christmas. More of that in a moment. Also, what I'd like to remind you of here is that Pluto kind of, grinding through those last few degrees in Capricorn very much has the theme of shifting from our reference point being external authority to our reference point being internal authority. All through our lives, we've always referred to leaders and politicians and teachers, etc. They have been the people who dictate authority in our world. But increasingly, what we're being encouraged to do, and this is through our mastery, is to find our inner authority, our inner anchor, our inner center. And I've talked of lots of ways to do that through meditation and breath work and being in nature. Just have a kind of instant default way of bringing yourself back to center. So this is where you operate from, not out there. You'll get much more scattered if your energy is referring out there. And even, if you have wobbly thoughts, go to instant mantras that work for you. In that wonderful Ho'oponopono forgiveness poem, or Blossom Goodchild's I'm the light, I'm the love, I'm the truth, I am. Just keep rolling that around your head because it's coded and it brings you back to self. Also, just to remind you that Mars moves into Sagittarius on the 13th. Now, this generally brings us a lot more hope and optimism here. Be aware through December as well, with this strong Sagittarius energy, that there's often a lot of very strong opinionation and judgment at this time. Belief systems are highlighted. And I mentioned this at the total solar eclipse. That's going to be operational, that energy, for another 6 months. But strong judgment might be coming in. It's going to be very interesting as we get into the full moon in Gemini. I'll talk about in a second how that's going to work. Okay, so Mars moves into Sagittarius on the 13th, which I think will be very positive. However, just to say, on the 15th, it comes to exactly conjunct the South Node. Now, it does this every couple of years. Mars roughly has a 2-year orbit, and we don't see kind of huge, drastic events happening every 2 years. But just to say that historically, it has had correlations with things like, for instance, we had this at 9/11. We had Mars conjunct the South Node being our collective past, accumulated karma or deeds, and Mars is very assertive energy. And the next day, the 16th, Mars is opposing the moon, so angry people potentially. So to try and diffuse that very strong assertive energy through the 15th and the 16th, stay peaceful, be in nature, do breath work, bring it down. The collective energy affects the astrology. They interact. We're co-creating all the time. Now I'd like to talk about the full moon in Gemini. So let me see if we can get this chart up. So we have the full moon on the 18th of December. This happens at 8:34 p.m. Pacific and 4:34 a.m. UK time on the 19th. And I've cast this chart, as always, for UK because this is where I live. So if you're not on UK time, please just ignore the clock face of the chart and the houses and the angles. We're only going to be referring to the planets in their signs and the aspects they make between them. So full moons always bring things to a head. They bring things into the light. They bring things to culmination. So see where this falls in your chart, because it's at 27:28 of Gemini. And so what are those feelings likely to be about at this full moon? Well, they're very likely to be around facts and information, because that's what Gemini is about. And what kind of facts and information? Well, if we look to Mercury, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. It is in an exact square to Chiron. They're both at 8 degrees, Mercury 8:33, Chiron 8:26, so about 7 minutes away from exactitude. So it's very, very strong. All the stronger because you'll notice that Chiron is stationary direct. Chiron is stationary direct that day. So that's really amplifying what this is about. So this is about facts and information around sickness, around health, around healing, healing protocols, perhaps. They are going to be very highlighted at this time. The sign of Gemini is also the sign of choices. So this may be highlighting the choices that we have made around sickness, health, healing protocols. I think those are very much going to be thrown into high relief at this time. The other thing that's incredibly powerful at this full moon, I mentioned at the total solar eclipse, and you can go back and watch that video, that it was tightly conjunct the Great Attractor. Incredibly powerful, kind of cosmic vacuum cleaner. This full moon in Gemini is actually, it's the sun. Full moons happen when the sun and moon are exactly opposite each other. And the sun at 27 of Sagittarius is exactly by degree conjunct the galactic center. So another very powerful point in our cosmos. So this suggests that December is an incredibly important time for our Earth. Now, when we have alignments like this, planetary alignments to the galactic center, we are more easily able to tap in to what the galactic center is about. Well, what it does is bring energy from further galaxies to enable us to access it. So we're at this time around the full moon, we can more easily access galactic information, higher consciousness information. This is super expansive because this is helping us step out from our very contracted 3D selves where we've been kind of locked down for much of the last 2 years into something massively expansive, into our galactic citizenry, into becoming multidimensional selves, stepping way beyond that 3D contraction. So it's very exciting. It's also very initiatory energy because the galactic center kind of spews out a huge amount of cosmic energy with which we make our world. From that invisible cosmic energy, we create our world. So with all the total solar eclipse was sucking away massive galactic vacuum cleaner of the Great Attractor, all the dirt and muck and secrets and under the carpets that hasn't been cleared for a long time. And there's a real sense of us stepping into much clearer, brighter, kind of diamond sparkling crystalline light at this time, because something has to replace the vacuum. So that is beautiful. This constant tipping point that we're at between the old and the new. And I talked last time about in the next few months, we're just going over the pivot of the seesaw. And I feel that so strongly. We're right on the precipice in these few months. We also, you will notice, have Neptune in very wide T-square to the sun and moon here. And it's wide, but this is really helping us to see things from a higher point of view, a more spiritual point of view, seeing them from, your eagle's perch, as it were. And this can also reveal secrets. The full moon shines a light on secrets, and Neptune is also very connected to secrets. So what are those secrets going to be about? Well, they could be, around what I've just talked about, health and healing, etc. But they are also probably very much linked to this conjunction between Venus and Pluto. Pluto always connected to secrets in its rulership of Scorpio. So this could bring up secrets again of the rich and powerful. It's interesting, Venus is involved. Venus is stationary, retrograde here, so that's very amplified at this time. So it could be sexual secrets, financial secrets of the rich and powerful. It's very interesting to me at this time that the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is going on. It started, I think, 29th of November. I believe it runs for 6 weeks. So we will see what comes out from that could possibly accelerate the collapse of the old order. And it's really interesting. Because what I'd also like to remind you of as well is Eris here at 23 of Aries is still very tightly square, actually both Venus and Pluto. And this has been running for the last 2 years. And I've talked about Eris a great deal as being the goddess of chaos and discord. She fights against inequality and exclusion. And I just very much like to quote astrologer researcher Alan Clay, because he's added in another aspect to Eris, which I think is spot on. It really resonated with me, that she is the truth teller. And that, I'm quoting his words here, that how we have to stop being fooled or stop fooling ourselves. That's one of the missions of Eris, which of course is what often leads her to become the feisty street fighter, to take to the streets. Very, very interesting. We also, she's not marked here, but Ceres, the goddess of grains, agriculture, food in general, actually, is conjunct the North Node in Gemini. She's at 0.22 minutes of Gemini. A very tight conjunction here. So in general, this brings up the North Node as our future collective destiny. This does bring up issues again around food supplies, that kind of thing. And just as I've said for the last year, really have some long dated food in your house that you love to eat anyway. I know people in British Columbia were really delighted that they had stocked up with food, because that massive land split with the roads being cut off probably for months before they're fully repaired means they can't easily get their normal food deliveries that they would do. So they are very grateful to have stocked up. So no panic, just have some food in your house. And then if there are disruptions, that won't be a big deal. And those, I think, will continue through next year for sure. Uranus in Taurus has the same message. Taurus food, Uranus has this erratic energy. It's not steady. Very positively at this full moon, we have Jupiter, 28 of Aquarius, in a very tight trine to the moon. Beautiful, really beautiful, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so it's very connected anyway to the galactic center. And Jupiter is also actually sextile the sun. So it brings this feeling of expansion and freedom and higher horizons, really looking out to the cosmos as the galactic center encourages us to do, to step into further galaxies. And just to remind you also, I know some of you have seen the interview that I did with Zachariah, who is channeled through Janet Trelaw. He is an aspect of the Ascended Master Dwal Kul. And when I was interviewing Zach recently, I'll put the link below in case you haven't seen it, but I'm well aware that there's surges of evolutionary energy around all the equinoxes and the solstices. So I was asking Zach, for this Capricorn solstice, are we going to get this big surge of energy, which I'm anticipating, evolutionary energy? And his answer was yes, and it isn't just around the solstice. It actually spans from the 15th of December until the 11th of January. From the 15th of December till the 11th of January. Very long time, almost 4 weeks of this, we're surfing the waves here of evolutionary energy. We're being taken higher and higher through our evolution, very fast. And that is why people have got experiencing so many physical symptoms of headaches, sleeplessness, tinnitus, aches and pains, all kinds of symptoms, being wired, jazzed up, because our bodies, our little energetic individual systems, are having to adapt so fast to an energy they've never experienced in our lifetimes, because it's coming in so quickly, this ascension energy. So Jupiter important at this full moon. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. And I also just want to touch on the Capricorn solstice, because that happens on the 21st of December. It happens, if we look at, say, Washington, D.C., it's happening at 11:02 in the morning. And these kind of strike a tuning for the next 3 months. So here, if we look at Washington, this only works for that geography, but we have the ascendant at 3 degrees of Pisces. Now that's really beautiful because it's conjunct one of the fixed royal stars of Persia called Fomalhaut. And Fomalhaut is the spiritual teacher. Beautiful. Jupiter at 28 of Aquarius is also conjunct that ascendant. Wonderful. Again, this feeling of opening up to our future. Because Jupiter was also a sky god like Uranus. There's an opening up to the cosmos. It rules Sagittarius. It's reaching out. It's long, far distant travel to somewhere we haven't been before. And Jupiter is very strongly aspected at this solstice. Not only is it conjunct the ascendant, it's semi-square to Mercury. It's square to the nodal axis. So again, this surge of futuristic energy coming into where we're going, particularly over the next 3 months. It's quintile Uranus, which is about the expansion of our consciousness. And also reinforcing that, we have Mercury trine to Uranus, downloads, insights, rushing energy of things that we hadn't perceived before, connected to the mind of God, connected to our superconscious. It's a very, very creative solstice. So that is really wonderful around that time, knowing that's going to last for another 3 months as our backdrop to everything else that's happening. And there's a lot happening, because if we come back to Christmas, that many of us celebrate, on the 24th of December, we have this third and final square between Saturn and Uranus. I want to say that continues for a lot of next year. We have that continuing through the early months of 22, and it's exact to the degree, although not to the minute, next October. So the square is very strong around October and November as well. So the themes that I've talked about at great length are going to continue next year, but I think with a difference. Just to remind you of those themes, they are the old versus the new, the past versus the future, control versus freedom, rules and regulations versus individuality, autonomy, the maverick, etc. Those are the big themes. So with this third and final square to the minute happening on the 24th, that really says to me that governments will attempt to have greater control of their population, bring in more rules and regulations around that time. And that's echoed really by what I was saying about that second exact Venus-Pluto conjunction on Christmas Day. Because Venus is retrograde, it's hard to find our comfort and our pleasures as fully as we might. So there's a sense of kind of hard times or austerity in some way at that time. Moving on to the 27th of the month, we have Mars coming to conjunct a fixed star called Antares. Now, Antares doesn't have a great reputation. It is very linked to war and violence. And then on the 28th of December, we have a series of triggerings, irritable triggerings by the Moon, Mercury and Mars to that long-running Eris-Pluto square. So it's a kind of feisty, irritable, assertive, angry kind of energy through those days, 27th, 28th. And then I want to point out that on the 30th and 31st, Mars again comes to conjunct the degree of the total solar eclipse on the 4th of December at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And whenever Mars reactivates that previous eclipse degree, there's some kind of assertion or repeat of the themes of the solar eclipse that I talked about in the last video. It can be quite assertive. So again, stay peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. Breathing, always be peaceful. What may help us is that Jupiter on the 29th of December, very different energy, is moving into Pisces, where it's going to stay until the 11th of May next year. Now, this is much more around hope, optimism. There's a spiritual impetus to this big time, which I think is going to help us enormously through the early months of next year. It may, because I've talked about Pisces in the past having no boundaries. It's water with no boundaries, and Jupiter in Pisces is big water, so it can link to flooding. It can also link to a lot of emotion, a lot of tears. So be aware of that at this time, and any issue around water could come up then, but it may be we're just feeling a lot of emotion at this time. And kind of looking just a tiny way down the track into 2022, which obviously I'll be talking a great deal more about. I said that the Saturn-Uranus square is going to continue through next year, but with a difference, because I think Saturn has had the upper hand in that square this year. Getting into next year, particularly as Uranus moves direct on the 18th of January, we are going to see more rebellious energy coming up. More energy of, no, we are not going to comply to the rules. That's my sense. Uranus is the planet of awakening, and I really want to call next year the year of revelations and revolutions. The year of revelations and revolutions, because there's going to be a lot coming to light, a lot of secrets just absolutely fire hosing out to the majority. They're fire hosing out right now on alternative channels, but not obviously to mainstream media. But I think it's going to be unstoppable. And when that happens, I think we're going to see much more rebellious energy. Next year, I'll again talk about this in much more detail, but next year I think will be much more unstable energy. I think it will be a much more eventful year. But the energy, because of the turbulence of things becoming unraveled, will be, you'll need to find the anchor within yourself. So start now, start that practice now, so it becomes just default, just absolutely second nature to you. The other thing I'd like to just point out with Uranus being so strong next year, Uranus is the planet of surprises. It's the planet of the unexpected. So it's linked to electromagnetic energy, coronal mass ejections, solar storms. It could be polar shifts. It could be all and any of those things. And the thing with Uranus is astrologers can find it very hard. In fact, I don't think you can accurately predict it's going to be next Tuesday or next month, because the nature of Uranus is always to surprise. But there is a potential for a flip. It's almost like flipping the whole game. There's a flip in something that may happen energetically, environmentally. I can't really define that yet, but it's going to be a flip where the whole picture changes, the whole game changes that we're dealing with. And that actually could really speed things up and be hugely beneficial for where we're headed, getting further up the beach. So I know this was packed with astrological information. Do think of it as going over the pivot point of the seesaw in these coming weeks and months. It won't necessarily be comfortable, but just keep your eye on the future. Don't look back. Don't give life support to the past. It's a done deal. And that's why the energy is starting to become so turbulent as it unravels. Keep your eye on creating something really beautiful. And what I'd like to do in the next day or so is put out another video, which is just my thoughts, really, a little more philosophical perhaps, and stepping back to the eagle's perch and taking a big picture look that I didn't have time to do in this video. It would have been just overloaded. So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you'd like more information on my books, my videos, my newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com, and have a wonderful full moon in Gemini. Thanks so much for listening. And if you celebrate Christmas, have a fantastic Christmas. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your amazing, loving support every single day. It brings me to tears. It truly does. It matters more than I can possibly say. I'm feeling quite emotional now, but it really does keep me going doing this for you. So God bless. Bye for now. and speak again very soon.